Conviction over comfort is not a phrase you just say to sound brave. It's not a slogan to put on a shirt or a hashtag to throw into a social media post. It's a truth that demands something from you. It calls you into discomfort. It rips you away from safety, and it doesn't care how many reasons you have to stay quiet, stay hidden, stay small, because conviction doesn't make deals with comfort. One has to die so the other can live. Comfort is subtle. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it tells you to wait. It tells you to just hold back a little longer, that maybe things will sort themselves out, maybe someone else will speak up, maybe someone else will take the risk. And while you're waiting, it starts building walls around you, padded walls, soft, gentle. You don't even realize they're there until you look up and realize you haven't moved in years. Comfort kept you safe, but it also kept you stuck. But conviction burns. It doesn't ask you if you're ready. It doesn't check your schedule. It shows up like a fire in your bones and dares you to ignore it. Conviction tells you the truth even when it's ugly, even when it hurts, even when it costs you everything. And when you have it, real gut-level soul-stirring conviction, you can't be quiet about it. You won't be quiet about it. Even if you try, your life will betray you. Your steps will move toward the fire. Your voice will rise even when your knees are shaking, because conviction doesn't wait for comfort to approve the move. That's what separates confident women from the ones the world has tamed. It's not just boldness for boldness' sake. It's not arrogance, it's not noise, it's conviction. It's the knowing deep in your gut that this matters, that you were born for this, that if you don't speak, something precious might be lost, that if you stay silent, injustice might win. That if you choose what's easy, you betray the truth that lives inside of you, and that is a price too high. So a confident woman, even when the room grows cold, even when the stares start, even when the tension rises, she doesn't shrink. She doesn't turn back to comfort. She leans into the moment and chooses the fire of conviction over the softness of silence. She says what must be said, even if it costs her a seat at the table. She walks away from circles that ask her to be less than who she is. She loses approval, she loses favor, she might even lose friends, but she keeps her integrity, she keeps her soul. There are moments in every woman's life where she has to decide who she belongs to. Does she belong to the world, to its ever-changing rules, to its fleeting applause? Or does she belong to the truth, to the unshakable voice inside her that tells her, this isn't right, this isn't enough, this isn't you? That voice, that conviction, isn't trying to hurt her. It's trying to wake her up. It's trying to remind her that comfort is a liar dressed in silk. Comfort will tell you that you're loved more when you're quieter. Conviction tells you that you're alive more when you're honest. Comfort tells you that peace is found in agreement. Conviction tells you that real peace only comes when truth is spoken. Comfort wants you invisible. Conviction wants you awake, and you can't live for both. The world doesn't always reward conviction. In fact, it often punishes it. But confident women aren't playing for the world's rewards. They're not here to make people feel at ease. They're not here to maintain the status quo. They're here to disrupt it. To speak when it would be easier not to. To lead when following would be more comfortable. To say, no, this is not okay. When everyone else is trying to keep things pleasant, that kind of woman doesn't show up to be liked. She shows up to be faithful, to the truth, to her calling, to the fire that refuses to go out inside her. And yes, conviction costs something. Sometimes it costs a lot, but confidence rooted in conviction can't be bought and it can't be broken. It stands even when it's standing alone. It rises even when the world wants it silent. It holds the line when everything else has given way. And the crazy thing is, when one woman chooses conviction over comfort, others start to rise too. They see her, and something inside of them wakes up. That's the quiet revolution. That's how generations shift, not with noise, not with slogans, but with a single woman who refuses to trade her fire for safety. Conviction over comfort is not just for the stage or for the spotlight. It shows up in everyday decisions, in the meeting room when you know the truth isn't being told, in the relationship where you've been asked to shrink, in the dream you've buried because it felt like too much. Conviction knocks, not with a shout, but with a pull, a holy discomfort, and that's when you decide, will you lean back into the familiar, the easy, the accepted? Or will you step forward, not because it's safe, but because it's right? Confidence is not the absence of fear. It's the presence of something greater than fear, conviction. That's what makes a woman unstoppable. That's what makes her dangerous to systems that rely on her silence. She may tremble, but she moves. She may break, but she rises, because her life isn't built on comfort, it's built on truth, and truth doesn't waver. Truth doesn't shrink. Truth stands, and so does she. The weight of purpose is not something you can measure with a scale or a clock. It doesn't count hours or calculate effort. It's heavier than that. It settles into your chest like something sacred, something that doesn't let you rest when you've stepped out of alignment. It follows you. It whispers to you when the room is quiet. And when you try to ignore it, it doesn't just disappear, it lingers, pressing down, asking you if you're really living the life you were meant to live. Purpose isn't something you find lying around. It's not handed to you like a gift. It's uncovered, unearthed, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully. It's the thing that keeps showing up in your thoughts, the ache that won't go away, the thread that runs through every meaningful moment of your life. It's not always flashy or loud, often it's quiet, but it's relentless. It doesn't stop tugging at your soul because it's not there to entertain you. It's there to call you higher, and that call, it's not easy. It never was meant to be. There's a reason it's called the weight of purpose, because it costs you. It costs comfort. It costs convenience. It costs the approval of those who just don't see what you see. Purpose doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't wait until your confidence is perfect or your plan is foolproof. It steps in the middle of your ordinary life and asks, what are you willing to carry? For women who are truly confident, purpose becomes more than a passion. It becomes an assignment. It becomes something you can't put down, even when it would be easier to live without it. You can try to walk away, and maybe for a while you do. Maybe you bury it under the demands of everyday life. Maybe you distract yourself with routines, with roles, with responsibilities. But eventually it catches up, and when it does, you feel it again, not as a burden meant to crush you, but as a fire that refuses to be ignored. You start realizing that your life was never meant to be small, not in the sense of fame or status, but in the sense of impact. And that's what purpose does. It reorients everything. It makes you ask different questions. Not just what do I want, but what was I made for? Not just what feels good right now, but what legacy will this decision leave? Because purpose, when you've truly encountered it, changes how you see yourself and how you live every single day. And that shift, it's weighty because you're no longer chasing the world's timeline. You're listening to something deeper, something eternal. You no longer measure your worth by likes, titles, or praise. You start measuring by faithfulness, by obedience to the thing that was planted in you long before anyone had an opinion about you. Sometimes the weight of purpose looks like sacrifice, staying up late to build something no one understands. Saying no to things that look good on the surface but would pull you off course, walking away from places that once felt comfortable because you know they're too small for who you've become. Other times, it looks like patience. Like waiting when you want to rush, like trusting the process when nothing seems to be happening. Purpose doesn't always come with momentum, but it always comes with meaning. People may not understand that kind of life. They might call you too intense, too serious, too focused, but they don't hear what you hear. They don't feel what you feel. They haven't seen what you've seen. That's why you don't answer to them. You answer to the call inside you, the one that keeps telling you you were made for more than this. And you can't shake it because it's not coming from outside of you. It's coming from the deepest place in you, and that's why purpose carries weight, because it matters. It matters more than comfort. It matters more than fitting in. It matters more than being understood. There's something sacred about knowing why you're here, and once you know it, once you've brushed up against the edge of that truth, you can never go back to who you were before. Confidence doesn't just come from talent, it comes from clarity, and there is no clarity like the clarity of purpose. When you know what you're about, truly know it, you walk differently, you speak differently. You choose differently, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you're no longer willing to live disconnected from who you were created to be. You stop asking, will they like me? And you start asking, will this honor the reason I'm here? You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop shrinking to make other people comfortable because you realize that your life is not random. Your story is not wasted. And every time you walk in purpose, you're stepping into something holy. And maybe the most powerful part of carrying purpose is knowing that it's not just about you. It never was. When you walk in your purpose, you give others permission to do the same. You break ceilings just by refusing to pretend. You create space where truth can breathe, where others can see what it looks like to live without compromise. You become a mirror, a fire, a light, and not because you're trying to be those things, simply because you refuse to set your purpose down when it got heavy. Because yes, it gets heavy. There will be days when you question the path, when it feels like no one sees what you're building, when the sacrifice doesn't seem worth it. But something in you will keep going, not because you're fearless, but because you're anchored. Anchored in that thing that keeps you grounded when everything else is shaking. That's the weight of purpose. It holds you steady. It keeps you honest. It calls you to live higher, not louder. And the truth is, the weight never really leaves. But over time, you stop resenting it. You start revering it. You realize it's not crushing you. It's shaping you. It's teaching you to trust, to persevere, to rise, not for applause, not for validation, but because you know that this burden, this fire, this quiet resolve is the reason you are still here. Fear is one of the most misunderstood parts of the human experience. People treat it like the enemy, like something to destroy, something to run from, something that only weak people feel. But the truth is, fear is always there. It lives in the shadows of every decision that matters. It stands at the threshold of every bold move. You don't outgrow fear. You don't outrun it. You don't eliminate it with enough success or experience. You just stop letting it reign. We've been fed the lie that confidence is the absence of fear, that the truly strong, the truly bold, the truly together, women somehow live untouched by doubt, insecurity, or the trembling that comes when you're standing at the edge of something new. But that's not true. Confidence doesn't mean fear goes away. It means fear doesn't get to make the final decision. It means you still feel the racing heart, the sweaty palms, the inner voices whispering, what if you fail? What if they laugh? What if this costs you everything? And you do the thing anyway. The women who look unstoppable, who move with purpose, who make bold decisions that shake the ground, they're not fearless. They're just not governed by fear. They hear the same inner noise as everyone else. They feel the weight of risk. They know what it's like to lie awake at night, wondering if they're enough, if this dream is too big, if this step is too far. But they've learned to walk anyway, to move through the fear. Not around it, through it. Fear is always going to have something to say. It's always going to offer you a reason to delay, a reason to shrink, a reason to stay in the middle instead of stepping into the unknown. And it's persuasive. It's not always loud, but it's persuasive. It sounds responsible. It sounds rational. It dresses itself in logic. It says, just wait until things are more certain. Just get a little more ready. Just stay where it's safe. It pretends to be your friend. But if you listen to it for too long, you'll look up one day and realize you've built your entire life around avoiding what scares you. You've played small not because that's who you are, but because fear convinced you that small was safe. The thing is, fear only has as much power as you give it. It can stand in front of you, but it can't chain your feet. It can speak, but it can't force you to listen. It can scream, but it can't stop you unless you decide that its voice matters more than your mission. And when you know that, when you understand that fear is a shadow and not a master, you start to see it differently. You stop waiting to feel brave. You stop trying to shut fear up before you move. You move while it talks. You move while it lingers. You move even when it tries to break you down, because fear can live in the room, but it doesn't sit in your seat. That's what separates a bold woman from the one who keeps waiting. It's not that one is less afraid. It's that one decided fear isn't the ruler. Fear isn't the guide. Fear doesn't get a vote. She's not waiting to feel ready, because she knows ready doesn't mean fearless. It just means willing. Willing to feel the weight of uncertainty and walk anyway. willing to stand up even when her voice shakes, willing to try again even after the last failure still stings, willing to be misunderstood, criticized, underestimated, and still keep going. Because she knows the cost of obedience is high, but the cost of fear reigning over her life is even higher. Fear will always try to write your story. It will try to convince you that you need to stay small to survive. That boldness is for other people, that you're too much or not enough, that your past disqualifies you, that your future is too unclear. It throws every scenario at you where things fall apart. It never tells you what happens if they don't. It never shows you the life that opens up when you decide fear doesn't get the throne anymore. It only shows you what might go wrong, not what could be made right if you stood up and moved. But here's the secret. The more you walk through fear, the more you realize it was never as strong as it sounded. You start to see that its power was in its illusion, that most of what you were afraid of was only possible if you stayed frozen. The moment you moved, the fear shifted. It still talked, but it lost authority, because the moment you act, you remind fear it has no control here. You're going to face moments in your life when everything inside you says to run, to play it safe, to stay in the shadows, and if you've built your life around avoiding fear, you'll obey it. You'll walk away from the things that would have shaped you. You'll miss the doors that were meant for you to walk through. You'll live a life that is safe, but not true, not whole, not real. Confidence is not loudness. It's not even certainty. It's trust. Trust that even though fear is speaking, your purpose speaks louder. Trust that you don't need every answer to take the first step. Trust that fear may walk beside you, but it will not define you. That's what changes everything. When you know fear is present, but it doesn't reign, you get your authority back. You take your power back. There's something holy about a woman who is afraid and still moves, a woman who knows she could fail and still tries, a woman who knows the world may not applaud, may not understand, may even reject her, and still she goes forward. Not because she's sure of the outcome, but because she's sure of the calling. She's sure of the fire in her bones, and she knows deep down that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision that fear won't win. You don't have to wait for the fear to go away. It might not, but it doesn't have to rule you. You can walk afraid, speak afraid, build afraid, stand afraid, and still be confident, still be powerful, still be called, because boldness isn't about fear disappearing. It's about fear losing its voice in your decision making. And once you know that, once you feel that shift, you become dangerous to everything that ever tried to keep you small. There's a quiet power in a woman who refuses to be what the world expects her to be. It's not loud at first. It doesn't always make headlines or demand attention, but there's a defiance in her presence, a resistance to the roles she was handed without her permission. She doesn't fit neatly into the box. She doesn't play by all the rules, and it makes people uncomfortable because people love predictability. They love when women follow the script. Be polite, be nice, don't ruffle feathers, don't reach too far, don't take up too much space. Stay agreeable, stay sweet, stay small, but something inside her snapped, or maybe awakened. She realized that living a life shaped by expectations was no life at all, that somewhere along the way, being accepted had become more important than being authentic. That shrinking herself to make others feel comfortable was not humility, it was erasure, and she chose not to be erased. The defiance I'm talking about isn't rooted in rebellion for the sake of noise. It's not about proving a point to the world, it's about reclaiming something sacred. It's about refusing to be reduced to a title, a label, or a stereotype. It's looking at what the world assumes about you and saying, no, that's not the full story. It's about knowing who you are before anyone else tries to define you, and standing in that truth even when it costs you. You see, the expected path is always the most comfortable for everyone else. It doesn't disrupt tradition. It doesn't challenge the room. It doesn't upset the order. When you follow the expected, you're predictable, manageable, and easy to categorize. You don't make people nervous, but a woman who defies the expected, she disrupts comfort. She makes people examine what they've blindly accepted. She forces them to look at their assumptions and realize maybe they were wrong. She's the one who speaks when silence is more acceptable. The one who walks away when staying would earn her applause. The one who says no when everyone else is nodding yes. She doesn't do it to be difficult. She does it because her convictions won't allow her to do anything less. Because she understands that expectation is often just fear dressed up in rules. It's the fear of difference, the fear of strength, the fear of truth, and she refuses to let fear shape her. There's something deeply uncomfortable about a woman who knows her own mind. She doesn't need validation to move forward. She doesn't ask for permission to exist. She doesn't soften her edges just to fit in, and the world doesn't know what to do with that, because for generations, women were told that their power was in pleasing others, that their worth was measured in how accommodating, agreeable, and compliant they could be. But the defiant woman, the one who breaks the mold, tears that whole narrative apart. She shows that power doesn't always look like dominance. Sometimes it looks like dignity, like restraint, like choosing not to perform, like being fully herself even when no one claps for it. Defying the expected doesn't mean you reject everything. It means you refuse to follow blindly. It means you ask questions, you test the weight of tradition, you examine the structure before you climb it, you decide for yourself what fits and what doesn't, and you make peace with the fact that some people won't understand your choices. Some people will call you too much, others will call you not enough, but you stop needing them to get it, because your life is not a product of their comfort. It's a response to your own calling. The expected says, don't speak too boldly, you'll intimidate people. The defiant says, if truth is intimidating, so be it. The expected says, don't aim too high, you'll embarrass yourself. The defiant says, failure doesn't scare me, regret does. The expected says, you should settle. You're running out of time. The defiant says, I'd rather wait for what's real than live a lie for the sake of appearances. And the world pushes back. It will try to shame you into submission. It will call you names. It will twist your confidence into arrogance. It will say you've changed when really, you've just come home to yourself. It will try to isolate you, make you feel like you're alone in your thinking, but you're not. There are others, other women rising quietly. Women who have also grown tired of the script, women who are finding their voice, one act of defiance at a time, not always through grand gestures, sometimes through a simple, firm no, sometimes through a silent exit, sometimes through a refusal to laugh at a joke that isn't funny anymore. And that's the thing about defiance. It doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like not reacting the way they expect you to, like choosing dignity over desperation, like walking away when they thought you'd beg to stay. It's in those small choices, those quiet shifts, that a woman begins to reclaim herself, to rewrite her narrative, to stop performing and start living. There's always going to be pressure to play the part, to dress the way they want, to speak with just enough strength to seem smart, but not so much that you seem angry, to be successful, but not so successful that you make the room uncomfortable. To lead but not challenge, to shine but not outshine, and if you're not careful, you'll find yourself managing your identity instead of embodying it. You'll become a version of yourself that's more digestible, but far less real. But a woman who defies the expected, she breaks that cycle. She shows that you can be soft and strong, that you can be kind without being submissive, that you can walk away without bitterness, that you can live with standards and not apologize for them, that you can hold vision, authority, grace, and boundaries, and still be fully woman. She makes it okay for others to question what they've accepted, to ask, who would I be if I stopped performing? What would I build if I stopped waiting for permission? What would change if I stopped following the expected path and started walking my own? And that ripple spreads, because boldness is contagious, integrity is contagious, authenticity is contagious. When one woman defies the expected, others begin to believe they can too. And before long, what was once called rebellion starts looking a whole lot like freedom. That's what this kind of defiance is, not destruction, not chaos, not bitterness. It's freedom, the freedom to be fully human, fully seen, fully expressed, and that's terrifying to systems built on compliance. But it's necessary, it's holy, it's unstoppable, and it's already begun. There comes a moment in your life where you start to feel the difference between being noticed and being remembered. It's subtle at first, but it grows louder the longer you walk in your purpose. The applause used to mean everything: the approval, the recognition, the affirmation that you were doing something worthwhile. But then you wake up one day and realize applause is loud, but it fades. It fills the room, but it doesn't fill your soul. It excites, but it doesn't anchor. That's when something in you starts shifting. You stop chasing moments, and you start building meaning. You stop reaching for the claps, and you start reaching for impact. You choose legacy over applause. Legacy isn't glamorous. It doesn't always sparkle. It's not always seen, and most of the time, it's not celebrated while it's being created, because legacy is slow, it's quiet, it's built in the everyday, in the unseen hours, in the faithful decisions that don't make headlines. Applause comes for the performance, but legacy comes from the consistency, the sacrifice, the unwavering commitment to do what matters, even when no one's watching. There's a reason why the applause is tempting. It feels good, it feels like validation, like proof that you belong, that what you're doing is working, and there's nothing wrong with being celebrated, but the problem is when the celebration becomes the reason. When your motivation becomes public approval, your identity starts depending on it. You start performing for people instead of living from purpose. You start shaping your choices around what will be liked, not what will last. And that's dangerous because the crowd is fickle. One day they love you, the next day they're silent. You cannot build your life around applause and expect to stand when the room goes quiet. Legacy asks something deeper of you. It asks you to plant seeds you may never see bloom. It asks you to keep showing up when the impact isn't obvious. It asks you to invest in the next generation, even when they don't understand the price you paid to pave the way. Legacy requires vision beyond your own lifetime. It means you're building something that won't just benefit you, something that echoes when you're no longer in the room, something that outlives your name. It's not glamorous, but it's holy, because the ones who choose legacy are the ones who build foundations for others to stand on. They aren't always the loudest, they aren't always the most liked, but they're the ones whose lives become living proof that faithfulness matters more than fame, that obedience carries more weight than attention, that quiet endurance builds deeper roots than loud success ever could. There's a strength in a woman who no longer needs the room to clap in order to move forward, who no longer tailors her convictions to the crowd, who no longer sacrifices truth for approval. That woman is dangerous to every system built on performance, because she doesn't flinch when they don't notice her. She doesn't crumble when they criticize her. She doesn't slow down when the spotlight fades, because she wasn't running for the spotlight. She was running for eternity. Legacy doesn't ask what will make them cheer. It asks what will remain after I'm gone. And that question, that shift in perspective, is what changes everything. You start leading differently. You start speaking differently. You start loving differently, because you're no longer trying to impress people. You're trying to leave something that matters. You're not just chasing moments, you're making movements. You're not just building platforms, you're building people. And that doesn't always get the claps, but it gets the fruit. It gets the longevity. It gets the reward that applause can never give. You'll be tempted to settle for applause, to do what's popular, to make the choices that look good on the outside, but cost you your integrity on the inside. You'll feel the pressure to prove yourself, to keep up, to stay relevant, and if you're not careful, you'll trade your legacy for temporary recognition. You'll chase attention so hard that you forget who you are without it. But a woman who lives for legacy remembers that not every platform is purpose, not every invitation is alignment, not every opportunity is obedience. She doesn't say yes just because the lights are bright. She says yes only when it matches the call on her life. That kind of discernment takes maturity. It takes sacrifice, because walking in legacy means saying no to things that would have made you popular but kept you shallow. It means choosing depth over visibility, choosing substance over performance, choosing truth even when it isolates you, and that's not easy, because everyone else will be clapping for the ones who are louder, flashier, faster. But you'll be in the quiet place, building something that doesn't collapse when the applause dies down. You have to ask yourself, when the lights go out, when the stage is empty, when the world stops watching, what will be left? Will you have something real, something true, or will you have a pile of performances that never really touched anyone's life? Legacy is about what you deposit, not just what you display. It's about who you raised up, not just who you impressed. It's about what you carried faithfully, not just what you posted for attention. There are people you will never meet who will be impacted by the choices you make today. There are children, communities, even generations who will stand taller because you refuse to compromise. You refuse to perform. You refuse to let applause dictate your direction. They may never know your name, but they'll walk freer because of your obedience. That's the power of legacy. It's not about fame. It's about fruit. Sometimes legacy looks like starting something no one understands. Other times, it looks like staying when walking away would have been easier. Sometimes it looks like forgiving when revenge feels more satisfying. Sometimes it looks like mentoring someone when no one else sees the value in them yet. Legacy is choosing the hard thing, the hidden thing, the holy thing, again and again, because you know the impact is eternal, even if it's invisible right now. Applause wants attention now. Legacy waits for impact later. Applause fades with the crowd. Legacy lingers long after you're gone. Applause feeds the ego, legacy feeds the soul, and at some point you have to decide which one you're really living for. Because the truth is, you were not born for the approval of others. You were not created to chase noise. You were made to leave something behind that speaks long after you stop speaking, something that can't be undone by opinions or cancelled by culture. You were made for legacy, and once you taste that truth, you'll never be satisfied with applause again.